Where do you see the India growth story?
So, as I think I mentioned to you last time we met, I see it as a snowball.
Right.
The snowball effect. So if you look at one of the mountains behind you, you can start with a very small one, and if you then push it down and it starts to roll, it goes faster and it gets bigger and bigger.
Right.
So I think what India is seeing now is like exponential growth. So the Indian economy is around $3 trillion today. We do expect, if things continue with reforms, that there is also peace and no conflicts, and there is transparency, there is a fight against red tape, investments in R&D and infrastructure. We think the Indian economy can end up like a $10 trillion dollar economy, maybe in a decade.
A decade or so. That's an important statement coming from you. What are some of the key drivers, do you believe, that we may see in the Indian economy, if we haven't seen already, which could actually push India up to that level? Which sectors?
So what is working in the interest of India today is that if you look at global trade, digital trade is today only 15%. But the digital trade grows twice as fast as the other trade areas like traditional goods. And China is the traditional goods producer, while India is the producer of services and digital trade and e-commerce. And also services is growing faster than goods. So India is positioned in areas where the demand grows faster than in other areas. So India is capitalizing on this. So, of course, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Yep. India has to continue with the reforms that we have seen during the last years. They have to even intensify to become a $10 trillion dollars economy. If it happens in 10 years or 15 years, it is just a fact that India is an incredibly successful economy for the time being.
One of the most important announcements which have been made over the last couple of days at the World Economic Forum and on the sidelines here in Davos, Switzerland, is the India growth story. There's nobody better placed to talk about growth in India than the RBI Governor. Mr. Shaktikanta Das joins us now. Thanks so very much for being with us. Sir, 7%. Extremely optimistic. It is in line, of course, with what some of the global projections are. What are some of the sectors driving this growth?
You're talking of current year or next
24,
year?
25.
Okay. Now let me also, start by saying that India has recovered from the recent volatilities and the uncertainties and the challenges, this multiple turmoil, one after the other, health crisis followed by, all these geopolitical crises. So India has emerged out of it a lot better. Our macroeconomic stability is far better than most other countries. Financial stability is also, our financial sector is also doing well. And the 7% growth in the current year, when we said it for current year, it looked optimistic. But as you know, the National Statistical Office has given a number of 7.3%. Now talking of 24-25, I made a statement in some other forum yesterday that we expect, I have a sense that the economy will touch a real GDP growth of 7% next year. And I said this on the basis of the overall macroeconomic conditions prevailing in the country. You see, all economic activities, the momentum of economic activities are remaining very positive. And we have reasons to believe that this positivity, this momentum will be maintained well into next year and beyond. I have made a statement also that India has now entered into a period of growth long haul. Yes. And economic activities are holding their ground. Momentum of economic activity is maintained. Aggregate demand conditions are remaining positive. Investment activity has started picking up, backed by continued high capital expenditure by the government. Private sector capex is also picking up, and agriculture sector in the current year and also expected to do better in the next year. So with all these confluence of factors and with a lot of activity also happening in with regard to investment in the new age technologies like fintech, in startups and technology based activities, that gives us the confidence to say that next year the growth would be touching about 7%.
The scale at which we are delivering and the speed at which we are delivering, for many it is a bit difficult to comprehend, because what I see here is an expectation that technology is to benefit businesses so that they are enhanced profit. India has made a case not only with regards to our digital capacities as professionals and as businesses. We have uniquely made a case for scale and speed to use technology to deliver social justice.
Yes.
And we are about to at the anvil of delivering democracy.
Yeah. And I think one of the key examples of that, and this is banking, right? I think that is ultimate empowerment. If women in our country who in the past have not had access to bank accounts, who need targeted support, actually get a digital bank account, and there is money over
More
there
than
which is directed to them.
More than that, the unsaid often stories of the female banking correspondent who is walking up to
Tell us
the
about those
homes
stories.
of our rural communities. They are on an average managing cash transactions, putting them back into the formal banking sectors from people who are a part of, let's say, informal segments of our economy. Volumes, I can speak as somebody who's seen it in UP, volumes go up to 3 lakh rupees a day. So the fiscal discipline that they are helping in percolation and implementation is fantastic. And all of them are armed with a digital device which bio-authorizes the customer to ensure that the engagement is transparent and helps benefit not only the banking and financial institutions to create a credit story for each customer, but also create, I think, a convenient engagement for the customer at hand. So though you are looking at Mudra, and I might here add, Mudra was not a gendered financial instrument. 400 million loans given, 70% women beneficiaries, which is about 280 million loans given only to women. Now what is fascinating is 230 million women opened their bank accounts, courtesy Jan Dhan, 500 million accounts in totality. 280 million turned up for a bank loan.
Wow.
Now, this might be easy for those who are at Davos, who are
But they can't get
accustomed to engaging with financial institutions to get credit for their businesses in large volumes. But imagine that woman who has lived her entire life in a village or who has lived in a slum to create a business plan, go to a bank, convince a bank that her plan is functional, receive the credit, service the business need and then service the loan, paid back, and then take repeated rounds of credit to grow her business.
Right.
So the revolution is not only at the top where stand-up and startup has created an ecosystem of enterprise. The revolution at the grassroots is exponential.
The India story has been quite positive over the last several years, certainly when it comes to high tech.
Yes.
How does IBM see India going forward? Are you going to be growing more in the future?
Well, look, India has been crucial to IBM's success so far and is going to continue to play an even more important part in our expansion, not only in the AI world, but in all of our other businesses, in the consulting business and the other areas where we provide services to our clients. India is very important for us and will continue to be very important.
During the pandemic, people were working remotely, people were working from home. If the digital infrastructure did not exist, that meant that we would have had 10 to 20 million people out of employment and unable to work. I'll give you our experience. We have tens of thousands of people in India. 98% productivity through the entire pandemic, through the worst of it and through all of the remote working that had to happen. Without that digital infrastructure, and it's more than just a telephone line or a VPN or a remote PC. It meant that they had to be able to function from home. So all of the apps, all of the delivery, all of the e-commerce allowed and enabled that to work. That, by the way, can be measured in the hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of productivity and in terms of GDP contribution towards India because of the DPI. The second is the opportunity that I believe is going to come. And you're right, it was discussed during the B20. I think it'll go faster maybe in another year or two. But people are looking at the low cost, the fact that half the world's digital transactions are now happening over the UPI system in terms of volume and at a cost that is 1% that which other countries are seeing. And that is something which people are looking at now and saying, can we build such a system? By the way, it's more than just payments. People think about it like that. It is taking out and making sure that the policy and the intention of the government can be met when the money flows directly to the intended recipient. That is something which countries all over the world struggle with and which can be brought to bear.
Has it been a mini India on the promenade this year in your
Yes,
opinion?
I think it is. I think this is...
And why the interest in India? I mean, I sense a great deal of interest in
what I said, growth. If you're looking...
Would you like to talk a little bit more about
well, I think
what people are saying, or how you see that growth story?
Modi has done a fantastic job. He's not just a great prime minister, but he understands brand. And he understands the importance of it. I mean, he is the chief brand officer of India.
Global growth. How do you see that on the India promenade, as it's now called, in Davos?
I mean, it's always a proud moment when you walk around here and you see so much of India. I think both from the private sector, corporate India, as well as from the government and the state government. So I think there is an increased presence. But Vishnu, what is something that is very interesting is when we talk to Indian CEOs and we talk to India Inc., the growth that they're talking is not about, hey, 20% growth, 10% growth. They're actually saying we'll double, we'll triple in 5 years' time, or even grow 5x. They're constantly looking for growth and scaling. And, this is the time to sort of scale up to the next level. And we see so many of the corporates that are actually talking about that. Vis-a-vis rest of the world, you don't hear those comments. It's more about sort of really sustaining and sort of doing on a much slower path. So the optimism is fantastic, and Davos clearly, I think India's presence is tremendous.
Yeah. When we talk about India's services sector and the services export sector, it's at what, $400 billion presently. If that scales up, which it is bound to do, AI, which is very much the buzzword over here in Davos this year, would be a significant percentage of that. How do you see that going?
Yeah. So one, as a services sector, which of course, software is the biggest part of services, but there is accounting, there is professional services, there's a lot of other engineering services and others that are being provided in India with the captives and others. We believe that has a potential to go from 400 billion to a 1 trillion, in the next 6 years. So by 2030, there is a potential to be a 1 trillion services economy. And we estimate that 40% of that will actually come because of generative AI and AI. Right. So I think clearly services is a big, massive sector for us. And we've already overtaken Saudi Arabia from oil exports. But I think this is something that we are very, very bullish about.
Yeah. The India story remains fairly resilient over here. Our overall GDP growth rate is very positive. What are you hearing of people on India? And
look, I'm very excited about India, and I think the environment generally is incredibly positive about India. We'll grow close to 7% this year. I think we have all the possibility to grow 6 to 8% over the next 10 years. How many economies of our scale and size in the world are doing that? Yeah. I think the opportunity for us to be a consumption economy is hugely, hugely attractive to many, many global customers. And I talk to enterprises across the world. They look at both India as a market opportunity destination, but also as a talent destination. So the India story is very, very strong, and with lots and lots of companies looking at de-risking and looking at alternatives, I think that only strengthens the India story.
What's the big change over here? Is there a change from an India standpoint?
There is a much greater focus on India, and that's something we've seen over the years. There was something which started last year and this year has been continuing. Everyone's asking about India. Folks who are in India, how do we expand more? Folks who are not in India, I've met with a very large number of global CEOs over the last 4 days, and that's something that's top of mind for them. And I think the government has done a very nice job in ensuring ease of business and being able to attract investors to come into India. And I think that's something is very essential for Make in India, the vision that's there, and to be able to achieve the Viksit Bharat goals that the Prime Minister has set out. So on all of those fronts, I think things are moving really well, and that augurs extremely well for India and its economy.